Hey, it's Big G and I'm coming to you from the Design District here in Miami. And I want to talk to you guys about the importance and the interesting investing area of Rolex watches and luxury watches in general. With a huge decline in the stock market, crypto being hit, it's amazing to see that there's record auction sales for things such as Rolex watches and luxury, fine wine, and blue chip artwork, and a sea of inflation and huge decline in things like Bored Apes, which went down over $100,000, a huge volatility market. So today I'm gonna break down why you should consider investing in Rolex watches and luxury art in general. So the cool thing about investing in luxury watches and things like a Rolex is the fact that you can keep these watches very well conditioned over the years, and you can pass them on as a family heirloom or at auction houses. And watches are both a functional thing, they're a timepiece, as well as a creative art form of genius. They tell time, there's a whole clock and interior built in it, and it signifies luxury. For example, with Rolex watches, you have a major history for Mr. Hans in Switzerland going to London, and celebrities like Winston Churchill, James Dean, who's a sex symbol, Marilyn Monroe, and of course recently Cristiano Ronaldo having the most expensive Rolex watch in the earth, which is incredible. So watches are a store of value. Luxury watches specifically have interestingly appreciated over time versus luxury vehicles, which have decreased in value a lot of the time. And it's very interesting because these luxury watches like Rolex have a fixed supply, meaning that these manufacturers with luxury goods, they're not going to flood the market with inferior goods or absurdly low prices. They're going to do supply and demand. So with Rolex watches, every year they release a specific amount of series and editions. For example, Submariner, they might make only a certain amount of it and they won't make a lot of them. So it's very interesting. Did you know that Rolex watches have beat the S&P 500, crypto, and the art market in general over the S&P 500 above 10% in the last 10 years? This is incredible. Like I said, they control the supply of Rolex watches. They're an art form. A lot of artistry and craft goes into the artwork, the embezzles, the dials, everything's very intricate in these things. They only release a certain amount each year, and Rolex watches, they appreciate a lot of value because people are holding on to it long term, like I said, like a family heirloom, or they're dealing on the secondary market. They're going to Christie's, they're going to other sites to sell these watches, and people, there's a market for them. People like the fact that watches and real property, watches are an example of real property. They're physical, so you can wear them, store them in a safety deposit box, and you can have quick access to them. They're physical. They're not like paper money or stocks, which fluctuate really rapidly given the market. These things are being held onto, so it's not like a YOLO trade. So in terms of exited net returns, a Rolex watch on average has gone about $5,000 a decade ago, a few years ago, all the way up to an average price above $13,000. If I'm doing my math right, it's above 50 or 60% exited return over this time, which is much better than the S&P 500, which is like 10 to 12%. So that's incredible. That's telling you a lot. You have a lot of social proof with these watches. They signify luxury. For example, Cristiano Ronaldo is a big spokesman. He has one of the most wealthy Rolex watches on earth, above 130K euros, very probably more than that. You have a history of the brand from Switzerland. You have the likes like Sir Winston Churchill had a Rolex watch. You have other symbols like the sex symbol James Dean, one of the most famous actors of all time. Even revolutionaries like communist Che Guevara had a Rolex watch, which is hysterical. So you have that social proof, you have that secondary market of people buying it, and you have that appreciation factor versus depreciation. Rolex watches have accelerated value, especially during COVID in 2020, have still gone up, and even the brand had to release a press statement given the, saying that the prices have gone up. There's a limited supply, we have supply chain issues, and of course economics 101, you have a limited supply and you have people buying still, hence value is going to continue to go up. Obviously past performance doesn't necessarily mean future, but we do have that history. With NFTs and like Bored Apes, we have a few years of that history. With Rolex watches, we have a brand that's going back from 1902, so we have decades of exited returns. So obviously you want to do your research ahead of time, but we have that financial factor, social factor, and limited supply, which hence give value to Rolex. So one of the best performing examples of Rolex watches is the GMT Master 2. This is the premier luxury statement and division of Rolex that they launched a few years back. And this has this characteristic dial with the alternating red and blue, and of course a Rolex technology involved. So the interesting thing about this is its technological functionality. It has a crown which allows you to rotate the time manually and not alter certain fingers on the dial. This is another pro of Rolex watches and luxury watches. As that technical time, it tells time, has serious craft and artistry that goes into the design. And this is one of the best performing Rolex watches on the market. We do, in terms of my appraisal research, we're seeing a consolidated value around 20 to 50,000, if not more, given the quality of the watch. And this is great to see because you have this confluence of value and limited supply and creative design that hence boosts that value of the watch. So guys, from my appraiser background at Christie's and studying there, I came up with some tips to spot Rolex fakes, which are a huge problem in the luxury brand industry. We have a lot of knockoff brands from China and people selling fake ones on the street. So I want to bring up certain points to spot fake watches and fake luxury goods. I have a list right here I'll go over. But one of the main things with Rolex watches and watches in general, you want to pay attention to the quality of the material. So if the material feels different, you know, like a plastic or metal, it might make a different sound or have a different texture to it. So in Rolexes, if it's gold or steel, if it feels a little wonky and it stains, that could be an issue in terms of tarnishing. That's a surefire sign of a fake watch. Another one is the dial. If you hear a really loud dial and the dial is kind of moving erratically or really too fast, that's a sure sign that this is an inferior good, meaning that somebody knocked it off, you know, some factory, and you want to look for a Rolex watch that has more of a lower sound to it. So in terms of places to buy Rolex watches and luxury watches in general, I would suggest online or in person, like auction houses such as Sotheby's or Christie's. They have a lot of online sales for these watches. Another one is Bob's Watches, which is a comprehensive guide to luxury brands. You have eBay, but be careful with eBay. There are some fakes on there. Live auctioneers, and Christie's has a really notorious online area where you can buy Rolex watches. So where is the best geographical area to buy Rolex watches? Well, this is contingent on the VAT, which is a value tax. For my research doing appraisals, I found that Europe is probably the best area to buy Rolex watches, although that varies. I found that countries like Greece, Bulgaria, and Eastern Europe, including Hungary, actually have some of the best sales. Given these countries are a little bit less developed from the West, people are kind of trading and bartering more. And these areas are close to the manufacturing hub of Switzerland and London, the main flagships of these brands. And these countries also have in the EU more favorable VAT taxes. Guys, this is just a very general video about the value of investing in alternative investments like Rolex watches. Obviously, you should do your research ahead of time. Watch out for scammers out there that are selling you fake watches. Consider having an appraiser look at your watch or help you buy a watch. Go to the experts, perhaps at a Rolex shop. You know, look for that iconic crown, the green and the gold emblem, and of course, diversify your portfolio. If watches and luxury goods are not for you, you know, stick to index funds, bonds, those type of things, or diversify your portfolio. It's incredible to see the exited returns for luxury and real property going up, given the huge kind of dip in the stock market and these types of things. We've seen record prices for fine wine, art, and luxury goods, including Rolex. Hopefully in the future it can continue to have those exited returns. I see this not discontinuing. We have a huge market, huge secondary market, limited supply, celebrity and historical precedence for the watch. And I don't see Rolex going away as a company. They're very highly valued. And of course, do your research ahead of time. So guys, I appreciate you checking out my video. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave any feedback or your favorite Rolex watches below in the comment. My personal one is a Submariner, really beautiful watch. I've been across a lot of friends that have it, so maybe one day. So I'm really happy to make more videos for you, sharing my stories, my backgrounds in alternative investments. And please have a good day, all right? Ciao.